hesitate in, showing your disbelief for anything that we are talking about. So if I'm, let's say, if I say that, everything came out of nothing in a big bang, just like this. So you are welcome to, criticize it, show your disbelief, that what makes you think, what is the proof behind this kind of a thought? And I'm not saying that I might be able to give answers to all your questions, but it might add to the number of questions that I myself ask. So that's the beauty of science. How do we believe that what science is saying, like, and we cannot experimentally do it, is true? So there are two ways to believe in science. One is you do it yourself. What theory tells you, what logic tells you, you do it, and you get a result that makes sense, and you can explain what is happening by scientific fundamental laws. Then you believe, okay, I expect two south poles of a magnet to repel each other. I do it and they repel each other. And then you will be puzzled and you will think, why is it happening? What's there in two similar poles of magnet that they are not attracting to each other? Then someone will say, I think, that I think is giving rise to a theory. That's how science progresses. People start thinking out of the box and everything is just, I think. So someone will say, I think it has to do something with the arrangement of atoms at the north and the south pole that defines the north and the south poles. Then people will say, okay, if you are right, let's try to do some experiments and prove this. And then we realized, in fact, it is the case. Why it is the case? Because we can convert substances which are non-magnetic, but when we pass electricity through it in a direction, they start behaving like magnets. So a piece of metal, a piece of iron, you can make it into an electromagnet, right? So it is a magnet that you can operate by switch on and switch off. So if your fundamental concept of how a magnet is formed is correct, instead of, apart from finding natural magnetic rocks, you can also develop your own magnet because you know what is the fundamental truth behind a magnet. But if it is not true, then it won't work. For example, someone said that, okay, I think if we could harness the flow of air current, that air can lift heavier objects than its own weight, or same is for water. But how will you prove it? So we developed a jet engine and we put it in a machine. We call it aeroplane. There are hundreds of people sitting in it with their luggage. The plane itself is like heavier, a lot, tons of weight. But the engine starts, the plane starts running, and then it starts flying. So the law of stability or aerodynamicity, everything that someone thought, I think this is what should be happening. When we tested it, if it worked, then it's true, it's science. If it didn't work, it's not true. That is one way. Prove it experimentally. Second thing is, if it is just at the stage of a theory, how will you say that which theory is better? Like someone can say, no, this is not how it was, this is how it was. In that case, you look for an argument which has less assumptions. Whenever we make an argument, we make assumptions, right? So let's assume, like in mathematics, let's you say that let the value of x be 2, and then you prove something, right? So here also in science, we make assumption. Let's assume that Earth attracts everything towards itself, right? So this is an assumption. Then you go on to do experiments later on, or to make formulae that verifies your assumption. So the theory with the least number of assumptions is regarded as a better one, right? Of course, there can never be a theory which has 0 assumptions. That's why it's a theory. If it has 0 assumptions, then it's not a theory, it is a proven fact. Okay. So that's how theories develop into fact through experimental evidences. Now, thing with evolution is that we will deal with majorly with biological evolution, and we'll not talk about celestial evolution or cosmological evolution, or we will talk a little bit about chemical evolution also, not little bit, but I will try to go into details of chemical evolution also. But yes, so One another thing that I would like all of you to be very clear about is you are free to stop me and ask questions which are not your questions, but there might be questions, around you from your family, extended family, friends who are or who may or may not be studying science or may not be studying the biological branch of science, but some other branch of science. They are always very skeptical about a lot of natural theories, thinking that they are just theories. See, when someone gives a theory, you have to give it a name, like, theory of evolution, theory of origin of species. But it doesn't mean they are just theories till now. Now we have proof, evidences in support of these theories that tell us that what these theories, what these scientists used to think is in fact correct. So in this chapter, we will talk about the first question, the biggest question: how did life evolve, right? But before that, you have to ask, how did life originated? What was the starting point? Do we have any answer about the starting point? We might not have a clear-cut answer about starting point, but what evidences do we have that suggests one way of starting point that is possible? So that's called origin of life. And once life originated, and I'll try to give you evidences in favor that how we have done these experiments that tell us that life didn't just came out of a magic or a blue. So and also, if you are studying this chapter, one thing I'll suggest is keep your personal and cultural beliefs. Like, we all belong to some or the other belief, faith, and culture, but that has nothing to do with science, right? Science is not there to prove or disprove or contradict or make something feel big or small about culture. Cultures are what, that's why they're called faiths, right? I have a faith. I don't need someone to prove that my faith is true. I have faith in my father, right? I have faith in my mother. Now, can it be scientifically proven? Can someone with the help of a equation tell me that whether my faith is stronger in my father or in my mother? No, that can't be done. That's why it's faith. It does not need proof. But science needs proof, right? So when we talk about things of culture, of people often get offended by things in science, saying that this is against. So studying evolution, especially biological evolution, unfortunately is banned in many parts of the world which are ruled and governed politically by on religious principles, and not just one kind of religious principles but many kinds of religious principles, even like so if we try to see through the lens of science any religious textbook, it won't get across the threshold, it won't pass. But that's not the motive. And also the other way around, sometimes I also see people trying to say that my faith is the best, and then you ask, why do you think your faith is the best? Because my faith is scientific. But that's an absurd statement. Your faith cannot be scientific. If your faith is scientific, it's not a faith, it's a fact, right? None of our faiths are fact, so it doesn't have to be proven by science to be accepted. I have accepted trust, faith in something, in my parents, in some entity, in some belief, in some moral principles. Like we say that do not steal. Now, why? Can anyone scientifically prove why should we not steal? No, because that's not what science is for. No one can scientifically prove karma. If you'll do bad to someone, bad will happen to you. But these are some things I believe in, and it makes my life entirely different because apart from being a scientist or to believe in science, we also have to live in a moral fabric. So I often tell my students, when they go and talk about evolution in society or talk about science, be humble in accepting that people of different beliefs need not to give up their beliefs to believe in science. They can keep believing in their moral values, their faiths, their trusts in things. But when it comes to how things work in this universe, how are we going to treat this disease, then we should be scientific in our temperament, right? I should respect my elders. Why? What is the scientific reason of respecting your elders? There is no scientific reason in respecting your elders. It can never be proven that it has any advantage that you respect your elders. if you go by the theory of competition in the animal world, many younglings either abandon or kill their elders so that they do not have to compete, or they don't have to share the resources. When a lion takes over a pride, the first thing that lion does, it's the behavior of a lion, is to kill all the cubs which were sired by the previous lion. Why does it do so? Why does it kill small babies? Now, it's the behavior, because there the lion knows that till the time cubs will be around, the lionesses in the pride will not allow the other lion to mate, because lionesses are very, very protective about their cubs. So if the cubs are not alive, the lionesses are again available behaviorally to mate or to copulate. So it's their sexual drive that makes them to do so. This is the rule of nature. That's the rule of wild. Now they don't have any moral fabric here, right? Lion doesn't think like, oh, if I'll do this, will I go to hell or heaven? I'm killing innocent cubs. Should I do it? Lion is not thinking that. That's the difference between humans and lions. We have made a moral fabric around us. So when we'll dwell in evolution, you are free to debate, criticize, ask for proofs, and please do ask for proof. Otherwise, there is no difference between faith and science, because in faith, mostly what is told to us, like my father told me that you should always bow down to your grandfather and your grandmother whenever you see them, and I always do it. I never asked the question why should I bow down, or why should I fold my hands, or why should I take blessings from my grandfather? So there's no logic behind it, right? That's my faith. But if my father says that so the moon is revolving around earth, now that's where I will ask, how do you know that? Why the moon needs to revolve around us? Because that's not just a faith, it's a thing that I want to be curious about. So keep that thing very clear in your head when we are studying this chapter. So we'll deal with origin of life, the evidences that we have for it. We'll deal with evolution once things originated. If you are convinced with origin, then only I'll go to evolution. Then we'll talk about evidences of evolution. Then we'll go to how from a few life forms, now we have so many different life forms on the planet, right? So millions and millions of species are there on planet Earth. 50,000, 30 to 50,000 species of just ants and spiders are there on the planet. So how did they all come up? What is the reason behind this? That is biological evolution. Then we'll go to mechanism of evolution. How is evolution driven? And here we will delve into some molecular mechanisms as well. And you already know a lot about recombination and mutation from your previous chapters. So keep that back of your head, because these are some of the drivers. And then we'll talk about a principle that was given by Hardy and Weinberg. It's called Hardy-Weinberg principle. And it tells us about how much variation in a pool of organisms is possible for particular species. Okay. And then finally, we'll go to the history, like of animal and plant evolution together. And at the very end, a small section of this chapter deals about human evolution itself. So where did we come from, right? If I keep telling you that, this is where cockroaches came from, this is where lions came from, this is where birds came from, it's a very curious thought that you will ask, but what about us? Like, where did we come from? And what is the evidence that we actually came from something? Because there is a very loose note going around, and people use this to criticize the theory of evolution, that it says that Darwin said we came from monkeys, our ancestors were monkeys. So someone said that my ancestors were never monkeys, Darwin's ancestors must have been monkeys. So they made a caricature with Darwin with a tail, and everyone laughed at it. Even Darwin laughed at it. But Darwin knew that I do not have enough means and technology to prove what I'm saying. But he also wrote in his book very beautifully. Darwin also, towards the end of his life, started writing, shitty things, because he's a human, right? Every human is wrong. Even Einstein, Newton, Darwin, whoever it was. So that's the difference between scientists and the concept of God, the all righteous, can never be wrong. But humans can be wrong. So all scientists were wrong. But he knew that someday we will find evidences to support at least some parts of his theory. So today, what the theory of evolution and origin of life that we believe in is not 100% the same theory that was given by Darwin, because the things which were wrong, we filled it with new evidences and we made a neo-Darwinian theory of origin of life. Okay, so it's constantly evolving science. Now, so we'll deal with human evolution, and there I'll try to give you evidences to convince that in fact the life form, even humans, were not, they did not appear on the planet the way we look now. You know, our ancestors were not like we are. Our ancestors were very different from us. They used to look very different. Their anatomy was very different. And there are hidden evidences of someone made the Darwin with a tail. And you know, we figured out now in 2020, it was a very famous paper, I think towards the beginning of 2020 or 2021. I did not start my PhD then. That scientists figured out that indeed there is a gene which is hidden and non-functional in our genome, which is responsible for formation of tail. So Darwin was not very wrong. You know, we have, and there were experiments done on mouse, which proved that you activate that gene and the mammal gets tail. If you do the same in a chimpanzee or a monkey or a human, so monkeys have tail, chimpanzees don't have tail. So chimpanzees are more like us. They're very close to us. So if you can do it in chimpanzee, the next question is, can we do it in human? Of course, but that's not ethically allowed, right? Even if we make a human with a tail, just think about the social life of that one human. He'll be like the only human on the planet with a tail. So that's not allowed ethically. But evidences are evidences. Anyway, so let's start this chapter. And I think this preface was very important to orient you all. Please rip apart everything that you do not trust. That should be the goal, so that you go with a proper orientation of this whole chapter in your head. Now, asking a very simple question. When we say something is evolving, okay, like, you know, taking an example of our smartphones are evolving every month, every day, every year. You will see a new updated version of your favorite phone coming up. You know, they will just change something or put some new feature in it. So that's called evolution, right? Evolution can be used to talk about non-living entities that evolve, even living entities that evolve. And whenever evolution is talked about, one thing that is the fabric, that is the underlying concept, is time. We need time to evolve. Everything needs time to evolve, right? Whether it's a non-living thing, which we are developing, whether it's a software you are developing, whether it's, you know, it's a hardware, whether anything. So we have to first understand the time scale at which evolution happens. So evolution does not happen in you know, minutes or days or weeks. You know, it's very slow a process. You will not see the effects unless and until there is a major event which is driven by mutation, selection pressure, you know, molecular mechanism will be recombination. You will see some new features coming in organisms, and then those new features also have to be selected by the nature so that they continue to survive. So at the same time, you will see 3, 4, 5 new features, but only 2 will be useful, so the others will perish, and those 2 will go forward, and then they will diverge. So if you think of evolution, it is not like a linear path like this. It is not like this. And evolution is more like it starts, then something bifurcates it, then maybe this part again will bifurcate, but this will stop and this will continue. Again, some bifurcation. This will stop maybe, and this will continue. This will again bifurcate. You know, something will halt. It won't survive for very long and will continue. So if you think about evolution, it will look something like a, what does it look like? Have you seen anything like this in nature? If I take the same thing and make it like this, make some leaves also, what does it look like? What does it look like, people? Simple. It looks like a plant, right? I made a very bad diagram. Sorry for if it doesn't look like a plant, but what I'm trying to say is, what are these things? What is this? What is this? What are all these things? They are the branches, right? Branches that are emerging from the same stem. So for evolution, we use the term called branching descent. Why descent? Because something is getting passed on from a common thing, and it is not just being passed on in a linear fashion, that I had a Pushtani, Zevar, and I'm just passing it on to my son, and then his son and his son. It's a linear progression. But here it is branching. It will have 2-3 things cropping up, then 1 or 2 will halt, 1 will go ahead, and then again branch, right? Because at every step where you are seeing this branching, at this step, this step, this step, this step, at this step, every step there is some or the other selection pressure that is selecting some organisms, and some organisms are not surviving, right? It could be like back in the days when we didn't know, it could be like a epidemic, a virus that can infect the weaker immune system. So now whatever humans do, we do it against human evolution, right? So if you think, what is the cause of a pandemic, a thing that globally can affect humans? The cause is a virus in case of COVID. Now, normally, most of the human will die when they will contract COVID, because their bodies cannot fight COVID. But then there will be humans who will contract the same virus in the same amount, but will not show the same symptoms. Their body will deal it in some or the other way that we are not, we are aware of now, but we were not aware of back then, right? That is called difference in immune response. So if you allow COVID to just go unchecked and untreated, it will wipe out, let's say, half of human population, which will be very, very bad and terrible. But the rest half which will survive is immune to that virus. You understand? That constantly happen in nature with other organisms, but not with humans. Because humans, again, we were talking about these moral fabrics. We have ethics that we have developed. There is no logical reasoning behind ethics. Why one human should always save other humans' life? No logic behind it. It's an ethic that we developed and we believe it. So because of that, we developed medicines, vaccines, antibiotics, and we try to change the course of selection pressure on humans. So if a human cannot see properly, cannot see very far, you can get that human a contact lens or a spectacle, the human will see properly, right? But imagine a zebra that cannot see properly. Will it survive in nature? A zebra that cannot see very well, will it survive in nature for very long? Will it give rise to many offsprings? No, right? Why? Because that zebra will be the first one who will get hunted among the pack. Others will see a predator coming and will run, but this one can't, because zebras could not form their own zebraism, like we have humanism. They don't have a, zebrity like humanity. So they have not developed spectacles for each other. They are not helping each other. So that's why they're not changing it. So first of all, write down, if when we talk about evolution, it is how you define it is, it is considered as evolution is defined as gradual changes in the history of life forms. Evolution, biological evolution I'm defining, okay, not physical evolution. Biological evolution is defined as gradual changes. Gradual means slow and steady, not very sudden and fast. Gradual changes occurring in the history of life forms on Earth over millions of years. Over millions of years. Okay. And evolution is, yes, you know.
So could you define it again, please?
Yes, so biological evolution is defined as gradual changes occurring in the history of life forms. And the life form contains both flora and fauna. You can write in brackets flora and fauna that occurred over millions of years on Earth. Okay, that occurred over millions of years. And just like evolution of life, there is evolution of stars. So physicists, cosmologists study how stars evolve, how planets evolve, you know, how our sun evolved, how galaxies evolve. So all these things can evolve. Chemists study how molecules evolve, how drugs evolved, right? So, and biologists deal with life forms. So now first question is, where did life came from? Like if you're saying that it is evolving, there must be a start point. And that question applies to everything, to this universe, to galaxies, to planets. And indeed that is true for, you know, almost everything that we have studied till now. So origin of life, as far as evidences suggests, and the consensus among scientists is that it was a fluke event. It is an event, it is a random event that sparked this whole thing, right? What was so, but even for a random event to happen, you need some, it's not entirely random, you need some environment in which it can happen. For example, some things are spontaneous. If I ask you why they sometimes there are wildfires, so some jungles catches fire, right? The whole jungle is on fire, we call it wildfire. So is it every time a human's mistake? A human went with a mashal or a torch or a lighter and started burning some trees, and then one after the other every tree picked up? No, right? Wildfires have been happening since like the forest were there. How does wildfire happen? Sometimes wildfires are spontaneous. So there are dried leaves, okay, in a jungle, and there is huge temperature surge. It's very hot. There are dry leaves. The sun is like very hot. If you keep a paper, a thin paper, in the afternoon sun in Sahara Desert, the moment the paper touches the sand, the paper starts burning, right? So if the sand is very hot and you put a paper on it, the paper will start burning. It's a spontaneous process. You did not do anything because all the environment was favorable for this process to happen. You needed high temperature, you had it. You needed something that contains heat and something that will now accept heat, and that is paper. And paper is made up of carbon. So when it accepts heat, combustion reaction starts. Any carbon molecule. So there is not much difference between the biscuit that we eat and the paper on which we write. In fact, both are very similar. Both are carbohydrates, carbon molecules, long chains of carbon, right? One is glucose, C6H12O6 in the biscuit gives us energy. The other is a long cellulose molecule of carbon. So whenever any carbon molecule burns in the presence of oxygen, so oxygen should also be there, right? Then it breaks into heat energy, which is the flames that you see, plus CO2, which is the smoke that you see in the fire, right? So it is a spontaneous process favored by the environment. So it happened on its own. So these are called spontaneous processes. Origin of life was also one such spontaneous process that happened because at one point of the time after Earth was formed, the conditions were accurate for these things to happen, right? But again, write down the question. Write down the question. What are the evidences to believe in origin of life? So this question is for you. It might not come in the board. I'll tell you which questions are important. questions are for boards, but this question is for you people. So what are the evidences to believe that life originated at a point? Okay, origin of life. Now, do you know this very interesting thing that what is the fastest thing in the universe? The fastest thing in the universe. Sorry, come again. Someone said something. I could not hear. Someone said something. Parker says light. Yes, light is the fastest thing in the universe, but that also has a speed limit, right? It's fastest, but it has a limit. How interesting is that? It's like around 3 lakh kilometers per second. So in 1 second, it travels 3 lakh kilometers. If you, when you switch on the light in your room, you do not see light traveling from the tube light or the LED towards you, because it's so fast, you cannot contemplate its movement. And also 3 lakh kilometer, your room is not 3 lakh kilometers, it's just, a few foot, a few meters. So clearly it will move so fast, you will think that it's all or none. You switch on, light is everywhere. You switch off, light is nowhere. But if you provide it a bigger place, which is like universe is bigger than 3 lakh kilometers, right? Even our solar system is bigger than 3 lakh kilometers. And if you do that, you can actually witness light traveling, right? How can you witness it? You can see that there is a delay from where it started and where it reaching. If it was a phenomena that is present everywhere, there will not be any lag, right? So we know that light travels at 3 lakh kilometers per second. And then with science evolving, we also prove that it is an electromagnetic radiation, right? Light is just like electromagnetic radiation. We have other electromagnetic radiations that we use for communication. So we sent probes on Mars, and we sent a signal from Earth, and we realized that it is taking a lot of time to reach Mars. The signal is not, it is taking time for that signal that we sent to reach Mars. Similarly, it was calculated how much time does it take for the sunlight from the sun to reach Earth. And it is around 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes. So when I see the first light of the sun in the morning, 8 minutes, says Parker. Yeah. So when I see the first light of the sun in the morning, that light actually started from sun 8 minutes ago. Correct? It is just falling on my eyes now. So in a way, the picture that is being produced of the sun in my brain, on my eyes, on my retina, is 7 minutes delayed. Yes? So at every given point, when we look at sun, we see a 7 minute older sun. We see the past sun, 7 minutes. We see the sun 7 minutes in past. Now, to take this thought process forward, if something happens and the sun is absent, like in a blink, something removed the sun. There is no sun at that point. You will not get to know that for the next 8 minutes. Because for the next 8 minutes, the rays that has already left from the sun will keep falling on your eyes. And even though sun is not there, this is a thought process, okay? It can't happen, but think about it. Even when the sun is not there, you will keep seeing the sun for 8 minutes. And then all of a sudden, there'll be no sun because now the source of light is no longer there and light is not traveling. Does it make sense, everyone? Yeah, cool. Yes, Parker, please. Okay, Parker, are you raising hand or you are giving a thumbs up? I think she's giving a thumbs up. You have a question, or is it clear to you? So remember, the rule of this chapter is no moving forward unless everyone is.
So it's
Okay.
like peeping into the past, right?
Exactly. So all our telescopes are time machines, according to me. So I own a telescope, and I'm very happy about it. I wish I could, rotate it and show it to you. It's just right besides me. So whenever I see something from the telescope, it's like I call it my time machine, because it takes me back in time. Whenever, so suppose I'm seeing Jupiter, but that Jupiter is, minutes past in time. So I'm traveling back in time to see Jupiter when I'm seeing Jupiter through my telescope. If someone just takes Jupiter out from that thing, I'll not get to know for whatever minutes the light takes to travel from Jupiter to me. The more interesting thing is, this concept scientists started using to see how back in time Earth was formed, or universe was formed, or galaxies were formed. There are galaxies that we have discovered which are 60 million light years away. 60 million light years. So light takes 60 million years to travel. So one light year is the amount of time, amount of distance that light will travel in 1 year is one light year of distance. So light year is used to measure distance in space. Okay. So Parker has a question. So do we are differently on different planets because of how long the sun's light reach other planets? Do we age differently? That's a very good question, actually. We don't age differently, but the time itself might behave differently when we are closer to a body which has a lot of gravity, and when we are farther away from the body. But that deviation is very less if you talk about sun. But there are heavier objects than sun in our universe, sometimes, which are called black holes, right? If you have heard of the term black hole. So how many of you have watched a very, very beautiful movie, Interstellar, directed by Christopher Nolan? So it talks about the concept of black hole. So if you are standing, again, a thought experiment, if you are closer to a black hole, your time will, as compared to Earth, will be very, very fast. So 1 minute standing next to a black hole could be months or years on Earth. So you spent a minute standing next to the black hole, but back on Earth, people lived months, because time moves slower and faster near black holes, which are so densely, like in terms of their gravity. So hope that, but if two people are on moon and two people are on Earth, and they spent 1 year of 1 year of time on moon and 1 year on, so suppose there were two twins. This is again, and this has been proven actually. So if there are two twins, identical twins, after birth, you send one on in space. Let's say there's a colony on moon someday in future. When humans will start colonizing moon, they will also start doing these kind of experiments, at least with mouse, and people have already doing it. There are biological experiments happening in the International Space Station also. So if you have two twin mouse pups, you keep one on Earth, you send the other on moon, they spend 4 months. So you will say that their age is 4 months, right? But biologically, the one on Earth is closer to a gravity source, which is Earth itself. So the time there will be different as compared to the time in space, biological time. So the metabolism of cells, the aging of cells will be different. So the one which is in space will, age, biologically age differently than one which is on Earth. And this has been proven by clocks. So we have very, very atomic clocks. You know about atomic clocks? So how do we define time? This is again a whole new debate, a whole new class. It could be one whole class on time. But time is different on the surface of the Earth. And if I dig 1 kilometer inside the Earth, 1 kilometer above the Earth, moon, beyond moon, it's different. But the difference is very, very minute. But the fact that there is a difference and we could catch it by atomic clocks is magnificent, right? This is what science does. So yes, to some extent, Parker, the biological age will be different. Does that answer your question, Parker? Yeah, perfect. Now, where was I? Yes. So there are galaxies which are, let's say, 60 million light years away. And let's do another thought experiment. So if someone in that galaxy has a big enough telescope that it can zoom into Earth and look at Earth, let's say there is another life in that galaxy 60 million years far away, and it's looking at Earth using a very big telescope that could zoom inside Earth and could see living things also. Let's say we are all assuming it. So in 2023, now, when they will look from their galaxy on Earth, when they will zoom in on Earth, you know what they will see? Will they see us? No, they won't. They will see a Earth which is 65 million years old. Yes, they will see the Earth 60 millions back in time. They will see dinosaurs and small mammals roaming on Earth. But in fact, that's not true for us, because time here, because light, so the light that will leave Earth, which will be reflected from Earth, taking the information that we are present on Earth, where you can see the Great Wall of China, Eiffel Tower, you can see International Space Station, all that information that is carried by that light wave will take 60 million more years to reach that galaxy. So they will never know for another 60 million years that humans live on planet Earth. They will just know that, oh, there are dinosaurs like things, if they call them dinosaurs. So that's interesting, very interesting, right? So if you understand that, you will also be able to understand that when we talk about evolution, it's something like that. We talk on scale of millions of years. So if it does not make sense to understand that how can, elephants evolve from something as small as a mouse. So the ancestors of elephants were as small as mouse. So you will say, this is absurd. These scientists are just mad. They say anything. Oh, is my voice cracking for you, Iram, also? Iram, is my voice cracking? For Parker, it is cracking. I think, Parker, then it's your network if it's not cracking for others. Okay. Yeah, I'll just repeat. So I was saying that if a single line in the book says that ancestors of elephant were smaller than rabbits, then do not be very short-sighted in thinking, oh, this is absurd. How can it happen? How can the grandfather of elephant be a rabbit? But I'm not talking about the grandfather of elephant. I'm talking about the whole species back in time. Gradual small changes make them an elephant, but back in time, what were they like? Okay. So it's like understanding that whole star and light year analogy. Okay, now coming to origin of life. First thing that people ask this question. Okay, so everything said, tell me, how did life evolve? How did life originated? So there were many theories given. One theory was, which is called the theory of creation, is one theory which was the earliest. So earliest philosophers were nothing but thinkers. So they used to think back in time, if you will think logically, how did all these faith, beliefs, cultures came up? They came up because humans were trying to understand their nature. Humans were trying to understand what is this thing like on our top that looks blue sometimes, it becomes white sometimes, towards the evening it becomes red, in the night it becomes dark, and all of a sudden in that dark screen there are small dots that starts glittering. So what are these things? How is it happening? So they did not knew anything, right? That what is sky. So they thought about it, and they came up with answers that were just through their imagination, not tested by any experiment or evidence. So they said, see, this is all created. So someone created this fabric, so it changes color. It gives us light in the day, and it becomes dark in the night. And these studded things which glitter are the stars. In many cultures, they say that these are our ancestors that has left us, but now are watching over us from the sky. So all these answers started giving humans a sense of understanding. And then someone someday asked, oh, what is this happening? What is this loud thunder and this, a current jolting down from sky? So they did not understand how thundering happens. So they said, oh, I think the gods are furious. The god is furious. It's punishing us. So that's why it's happening. So let's try to do something to please whoever created this whole thing. So they will do some rituals. Every culture will believe in some other thing. They will do some rituals, and you will realize, oh, if we do this, then, but now we understand thunder happens because there are ions that get deposited on the upper and the lower level layer of the cloud. When cloud merges with each other, these charges interact. And just like anywhere in your cell phones, in your batteries, whenever two kind of charges interact, a current, like it's flow of charges is producing current. And you see the same kind of, lightning in your sockets, right? Have you seen that same lightning in your socket? You will also see the same lightning from your sweaters. Sometimes in the winter when you see some crackling sound, and if you are changing your sweaters in the dark room, you will also see a small spark coming out of it. That's the same thing that's happening in cloud on a very large scale. But now we understand that reason. But earlier people did not used to understand that. So they came up with theory of creation and many other theories. One such theory, which was a little more scientifically thought, was that all life have come from non-living entity. So at one point of time, there was no life. There was only non-living molecules. And then somehow, I don't know how, and I cannot prove it now, but I think somehow they started behaving like living. And then people were like, okay, come on, another story, But then someone took it seriously. Okay, this makes more sense than the theory of creation, that someone sat and created the whole universe in 6 days. So let me try to test it. How can I test that something non-living can start behaving or can make something which is the fundamental aspect of a living organism? So then the whole debate sparked, question started, people started raising question, how will you define life? So let me go to class 10th, where you have studied the fundamentals of living systems, right? Was there a chapter where you studied life processes and characteristics of life? Yes. So how will you define life? Anyone? Parker? Then we will talk about how life began. So how did you define life? If something is living, what is the 1 or 2 or 3 criteria that it has to fulfill? Otherwise, you cannot call it living. Movement cannot be it, because non-living things also move, right? Heart pumping the blood also cannot be it, Parker, because there are artificial machines that pump. Your motors that you put in the ground pump the water out that comes in your taps. So heart pumping the blood is as same as a motor pumping the water in your coolers. So that also cannot be called a characteristic property of life, right? I can make an artificial heart, and there are artificial hearts. There are artificial pacemakers. What are pacemakers? Those are electronic devices fit in the chest. The two electrode kind of things goes and pierce the heart muscles, SA node, and every 0.7 seconds, they give a small electric impulse that keeps the heart beating. So heart is actually a machine, a sophisticated organic machine. It's not enough to prove that something is living. Yep. Anything else? Cell functioning. That's perfect, Parker. Parker came to the level of cell. So Parker realized anything that she will answer with respect to kidney, heart, brain, the whole organ level will not work. Rahul will not be taking it as a proof. So let me go down to the very fundamental unit, which is cell. So some functionings are there in the cell that makes life unique, that is not present in any other place, not in any other machine also. And what is that functioning, Parker? If you are on the right track, come on, tell me. Before we understand evolution, we have to understand origin. So what is the characteristic property of life, people? What is that one functioning? What is that one process? Anything? Think about a bacteria. That is one single cell. Okay. Can you remember something called Metabolism. Yeah. You know what is metabolism? What is metabolism? How will you define metabolism, people? So it is defined as the sum total of all the biochemical reactions that happen inside a cell. Okay. So glucose enters the cell. Then there are enzymes that break down glucose in the presence of oxygen to produce energy. And then the cell works through that energy, right? You understand? So that is one thing. What is another thing? Another thing is sensing the environment, right? Awareness, consciousness. So even a single cell, a bacteria, is aware of its environment. Now, I just said it and you nodded all your heads. I saw Iram nodding head that yes, bacteria senses. But why are you so convinced that bacteria can sense its environment? What is the proof for it? Maybe I'm just lying to you. Do you see anything that happens which proves that yes, bacteria senses the environment? It is not just any foolish single cell roaming around in water. It is actually clever. It can know what is happening around. What gives you that proof? Or is it like, oh, sir, you are saying it, so it must be true. So let's move ahead. We will write it in exam. That's true. Tomorrow I'll say sun rises in the west, not in the east. Will you believe it? No, right? You won't believe it. Why you won't believe it? Because you have a compass in your hand. You can always check which direction sun comes from. So you will say, no, whatever you're saying doesn't make sense. It's not verified by experiments. Anything that makes you believe that bacteria can actually sense environment? It's 50 years. Yes, yes. I think she has the answer. Yes. Come on.
It kind of responds to the stimuli, right? It grows.
It gives a yes, correct. Can you just elaborate what kind of stimuli it gives a response to? So I think what Iram is trying to reach, I'll just help Iram, like it's Iram's answer, but I'm just polishing it. What she's trying to say is a bacteria develops into a cyst and stops dividing when the conditions are unfavorable. Right? Suppose there is lots of temperature, lots of salinity around and the bacteria cannot tolerate it. There is rise in temperature and bacteria, there is no other way, then bacteria will make a cyst around it. And how do we know it? We plate these bacteria on the colony, they will not flourish into colonies. But the moment the environment is back to favorable, the temperature is pleasant, the water is pleasant, the salinity, pH is pleasant, they will start forming colonies. So that is one right proof in front of our eyes that tells that bacteria know when the environment is favorable and when the environment is not favorable. That is first proof. Second is, few decades ago, when Alexander Fleming discovered a miracle molecule, which we now call as penicillin, he discovered an antibiotic. And you use that antibiotic, even a tiny drop of one single antibiotic shot will eradicate any bacteria in its vicinity. We could just kill bacteria like magic. But 60, 70 years after that, now we are not able to kill bacteria with the same intensity. The bacteria will grow right there in that penicillin because it's resistant to the same antibiotic. What is this telling you? That over generations, bacteria has evolved mechanisms, or it has got abilities, Now I don't know what deity or god bacteria worships that provided that bacteria with that power, but scientifically we know that bacteria has evolved pumps. So bacteria know that there are molecules in my vicinity that enter inside my cell and degrades my cell wall, or breaks my cell wall. So I have to protect myself. So what bacteria does, it through mutation, it got some pumps inverted. Bacteria enter through one channel and then the other channel pumps it back out. So it's called influx efflux. So you give bacteria a poison, the poison will enter inside the bacteria cell, and through the other channel, it will be thrown out. Now, this ability 70 years ago, bacteria did not had. It evolved in this time frame, and hence bacteria became resistant. That is one of the mechanisms. There are many such mechanisms that different bacteria have evolved. So these proofs that we see in front of our eyes tell us that bacteria can sense. So it has to be, sorry. It has to be consciousness. Now, consciousness is a more complicated term, so I'll say awareness or sensitivity or sensing capability to the environment. Okay, perfect. Now let's start with these two. These two are very good. So do you see any common thing between these two themes? Anything common between the fact that bacteria can do metabolism, being a single cell? It can also be aware of its surrounding, being a single cell. One thing which is common is molecules present inside the bacteria. For example, enzymes. And what are enzymes made up of? Let's say protein. And what is protein made up of? Amino acids. And what are amino acids made up of? Inorganic atoms. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, things like that. Not phosphorus. Proteins don't have phosphorus. But they have sulfur, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, right? So in the atmosphere, we have nitrogen gas. We have oxygen gas. We have oxides in the earth crust, in the stones. We have nitrites. We have hydrides. All these are non-living things, right? Made up of same atom. Then we have amino acids made up of the same atoms, but amino acids can form protein, and protein can form, can do a function of an enzyme, and that can be a molecule that helps a living system to live, defines the characteristic property of the living system. So the question is, if I can prove that using inorganic molecules spontaneously, you can make organic molecules, will it be a proof enough for you to believe that yes, life, or at least the tools which are necessary for life, can come from non-living things? So if someone proves that I take non-living matter, non-living atoms, non-living molecules, treat them with something which is again non-living, and after some time, amino acids or proteins or sugars are formed out of the blue, then will it be a proof to say that living things evolved from non-living things? Yes or no? So currently we know that where can you find protein? Can you find protein in a desert sand or in clouds? Can cloud form proteins? Can water form proteins? If I keep, so this is a water, H2O, and if I keep it for 100 years in this bottle, will I start seeing proteins formed in it? No, doesn't make sense, right? Or there's a cloud, or there is an iron rod, or there is a brick. Will it start forming organic matter on its own? No, right? But if I take atoms, atoms are living or atoms are non-living? Atoms are non-living, right? Atoms are just atoms, right? Every non-living entity is made up of it. But if I take some random molecules, not random, some things, some molecules, and do something to them, and they become organic molecules, which are present only in living system. So it will be first proof to say that, yes, this is the first step for a living thing, a living system to evolve from a non-living system, correct? and it is happening on its own. Now let's go back and ask this question. And there was one person, actually there were two people who first gave this theory of origin of life. So write down, first write down few theories that we have not been able to prove, or we have disproved. So the first theory where life came from, which still has some supporters and sign, we have evidences for that also, is called the theory of panspermia. So first theory is the theory of panspermia. Okay, what does panspermia says is that life did not originated on Earth. It evolved on Earth for sure, but it did not originate on Earth. It originated somewhere else. And then the raw materials that you need to make living cell came to Earth, carried in a meteorite or asteroid or anything like that. So it traveled from outer space, the raw materials, and it bumped on Earth and found a favorable environment, just like a flying piece of thin paper falls on a hot desert and starts burning, and CO2 is produced. So, something just crashed on Earth, brought with it the building blocks of life, and life then evolved on Earth. So the origin is somewhere else, it came to Earth. So write down. This thought was given by, I think, very early Greek thinkers. I will not call them scientists because they were not doing science. They were thinkers and philosophers. So early Greek philosophers thought, and when they thought it, they did not thought it in a scientific way. Early Greeks used to worship planets, right? They used to, so in their beliefs, in their faith, in their culture, they think that these, what we see as stars in the sky, the moon, the sun, Jupiter, Uranus, Mars, they all have celestial powers, right? So they are the life givers. So they started this thought process that fundamental building blocks of life called spores, right on. Fundamental building blocks of life called spores were transferred from outer space to the Earth. From outer space to the Earth. So according to this theory, the building blocks of life originated somewhere else, got transferred to Earth, and this is where evolution took place. Scientifically, this theory is till date not 100% refuted, and we can never refute it, because to neglect or refute it, you have to study the whole universe and prove that nowhere else we can find the building blocks of life. That we cannot do. In fact, the opposite has happened. Scientists have discovered that amino acids have been found from asteroid samples. And these are not the samples that fell on Earth. Because if something fall on Earth, you went and dig it, and you found an amino acid in it, you will say that amino acid was already on Earth, something crashed in it, and that's why amino acid got that sample got contaminated. So I think it was Japan, if I'm not wrong, who sent a probe in space. That probe made a contact with a meteorite or an asteroid. So it did what we call as the touch and go. It's like kiss and go. So that probe went past asteroid, kissed it, pinched some sample, and that went away. And then came back to Earth, carrying those samples. And in that sample, they figured out that there are organic molecules present, which tells that it does not tell that life came from outer space. It tells that there are organic molecules and it is possible to form organic molecules anywhere in space. You remember in chemistry, you read something called Lavoisier's law of like what is what proportionality, right? Lavoisier, class 10th or 11th, that if anywhere in the universe you have to find water, it will be same as on Earth, H2O. Its synthesis will be same, its molecular formula will be same, its molecular structure will be same. So water on Earth will not be different from water on Mars, water on Jupiter, water on any comet, water on any other galaxy. That's the constant consistency of the universe, because the universe is made up of the same raw materials. Now, yes,
So this theory is based on cultural aspects, right?
Sorry, this theory is based on
Cultural aspects, right? Panspermia.
It started with cultural aspects of early Greek thinkers, but now people have reformed it a bit, and they have taken the god angle of deity angle of planets. That so might be a early Greek thinker thought it like this, that Zeus, who's god of all gods in Greek mythology, who we know as Jupiter, it's a planet, might have given life to Earth. Now we know that something because of Jupiter's gravitational force might have entered into the solar system and then kind of collided with Earth. Yeah.
God as an entity doesn't exist in science, right?
Right, exactly. So when we take their beliefs for scientific explanations, we take all the angles of miracle, godliness, out of it. So we don't consider Jupiter as God in science and in general now, because early Greek thinkers thought that way because it looks very celestial and magnificent and things like that. Now they can understand how Jupiter was formed. It's a gas giant, and we have sent probes on Jupiter. We have also, collided a probe with Saturn. Cassini just dived in Saturn and gave us a lot of data about the planet. But what they thought, that life might have been sent by outer space, things or entities in outer space. Now we know that they were talking about comets, asteroids, or planets, right? So that's called theory of panspermia. So scientifically, it's difficult, nearly impossible to refute this theory, because the experiments that you have to do to refute this theory is impossible to do. And second thing is, it is not entirely incorrect that building blocks might have come from outer space. It might have come from outer space because we see these building blocks also present elsewhere apart from Earth. So if that building block, which is amino acid, is found in a asteroid dust, how did it got formed there? Again, that's a question. So then we come to the chemistry part. That the chemistry that happens on Earth is not very special. That's what Lavoisier told. That if anywhere in the universe, if you have to form water, you need one molecule of oxygen and two molecules of hydrogen, and you have to fuse them to make H2O, and you will make water. Whether you do it on Earth, whether you do it on Mars, whether you do it on a different galaxy, the result will be same, correct? The only thing will be the state will be different. If that place is too cold, water will always exist as ice, solid rock ice. If it is too warm, it will exist as water vapors. If the temperature is good, like it is on Earth, it will exist as liquid. Now it is the liquid form of water which is responsible for helping life to evolve. So that is the next step. So that's how we go in science, right? So that's theory of panspermia, which is many astronauts, astronomers, scientists still think that it might be true, okay? Second theory was, sorry, I lost electricity, but it's fine. Second theory is, which is refuted, is the theory of special creation. We don't study it now any longer in scientific textbooks. It's just a thought process. Again, started with early thinkers of different cultures thinking that since it is nearly impossible to understand how you can have so many different variety of plants, flowers, animals, birds, reptiles, insects clearly someone who's very, very supremely powerful must have created all this, whatever we see, right? So that's theory of creation. Now, but theory of creation has no evidence, and we can never acquire an evidence for a creator. So that's why that theory is refuted in science. And also the fact that the third theory, which I'm going to talk about, got proofs and evidences. So second is special creation. And for refuting this theory, many religious institutions divorced from science, and they started thinking of science as antagonists and opposite. But that shouldn't be the case, because faith is faith and science is science. Third is the theory of, anyone has a question? I heard some sound. No. Third is the theory of abiogenesis. This was a theory thought by, again, some thinkers, but in some more logical manner. The word abio means non-living. The word bio means living, right? Biology, study of life. Abio is non-living, okay? So, and always there's a difference between non-living and dead. I hope you know that. If I'm saying something is non-living, it does not mean it's dead now. Because for something to be dead, it has to be alive at a moment. So mountains are not dead. Mountains are non-living. Air is not dead, it's non-living. A corpse is dead. A bone is dead. A fossilized dinosaur is dead. Do you understand? A dry leaf is dead because it's no longer a living leaf. So abio means non-living, which was never living entity. And Genesis, you all know, Genesis is beginning, start, formation. Yes. So Genesis is formation or beginning or starting point. So the theory of abiogenesis says, write down. So this is kind of in a puddle. This is refuted and this is proven now. So the theory of abiogenesis says that, oh, sorry, before special creation, I forgot to mention one other one. A board question has come on this one. So there is a third theory that was called theory of spontaneous generation. Write it down. Theory of that life has this ability to generate spontaneously out of nowhere. You know, like miracle. Yes. Yeah.
That itself is abiogenesis.
No, that's not abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is that chemistry. So chemical evolution happens first, then happens the biological evolution. So abiogenesis says that life.
The one you're talking about is biogenesis, that life evolved
So
from.
the word biogenesis comes after abiogenesis happened. So abiogenesis is non-living things formed something living. Then it became bio. And from that point, it's biogenesis. So the whole theme of abiogenesis, theory of abiogenesis is chemical evolution, biological evolution was followed by, chemical evolution followed by biological evolution. So it was first chemical evolution, then biological evolution. But theory of spontaneous generation says that you don't need anything. It's just out of a blue, out of thin air, life can just come up. And why people started thinking, they were not saying that there are some molecules which are non-living and then they transform into living. They are saying that there is nothing and something just happens. You know, in many beliefs, you say that it's a command of the creator or something happens and there is life all of a sudden. So that's theory of spontaneous generation. Spontaneous. Now, what was the reason behind this thought is also very, very understandable. So people in older time were not knowing about the concepts of single cell bacteria, pathogens, spores, you know. So what they could see is people go for hunting, They bring meat. They kept the meat. And then after a few days, they see larvae crawling in that meat. Right? Some larvae, maggots. No, they were like puzzled that this piece of flesh is dead. Why, how, and why there are living things coming out of this piece of flesh? So that made them believe that, oh, for life to occur, you don't need anything. Life can occur on any non-living thing or dead thing as well. But what they did not know is that there are spores. So this theory of spontaneous generation, write down what it says. For a very long time, it was believed that life originated of, or life can originate of, dead, decaying, rotting, dead, decaying, rotting, and non-living entities. Suddenly, life originated out of dead, decaying, rotting, and non-living entities suddenly, spontaneously. Okay. Then there was one scientist who, yes, Iram, you have a question?
So this theory kind of coincides with the theory of Big Bang.
Theory of biogenesis.
Big Bang. That also
Theory of
happens
Big Bang.
spontaneously.
Yes, but that's not, Big Bang is not talking about life. It's talking about the creation of universe. Now, universe is all not living. Sun is not living, right? So Big Bang says how universe came into existence. It only the matter. Big Bang talks about the existence of matter, antimatter, and energy, all of it. How all these things. So there is energy and dark energy, matter and dark matter. 4 things governing this universe that we know of. How did they all came up? So that's the theory of Big Bang, that it came out of nothingness. Now, to define that nothingness is also a big task in physics. And I'm also not that highly qualified in physics to understand Big Bang, but yes, it says something like that, but it's not dealing with life. That's the difference. Here, this says that life can just spontaneously come from dead and decaying matter because people were seeing it around it themselves. Larvae coming out of flesh after some time. And if there is something dead and rotting like a leaf, you will see something else growing like fungi growing out of that tree trunk. So they got convinced that life can come from anywhere spontaneously. There is something very magical about life. Then came a scientist named Louis Pasteur. Pasteurization. He invented the process of pasteurization, which we use in our Tetra Pak milk every time now. Also the process of sterilization that we use before we give injections or anything in all medical aspects. So Louis Pasteur said, see people, there is nothing miraculous or magical about coming out of life. Life can only come out of a living system. It can never come out of any dead, decaying, rotting, or non-living entity. That's what Louis Pasteur said. So people told him, how can you say that? I see my larvae coming, maggots coming out of my dead flesh or my rotting flesh kept in my house. So you prove it. So he said, okay, let me prove it to you. So what he did, he took 2 flasks. In one flask, he took 2 pieces of flesh or meat and then boiled it. When you boil it, so his idea was that anything which is living, any spore or anything that can give rise to living must be present in that meat. So he boiled it, kept it in 2 different beakers. One was sterilized beaker, heat cleaned, heat killed, everything was cleaned and covered. The other was open beaker and it kept it in this. And over time, he proved that it did not came out, life did not evolved or started growing from pre-sterilized flask. So the flask which had piece of meat or yeast in it and it's pre-sterilized, nothing grew in it. But in the other flask where it was not pre-sterilized, then which was open to air, you started seeing new organisms, even if there was preheated yeast or a piece of meat which is boiled kept in it. Do you understand? Make sense? So he's proved that if what you are saying is correct, that life can come out of any dead, decaying, rotting matter. See, this is a flesh of meat kept in a beaker. All I have done is sterilize the beaker. All I'm doing it, not allowing anything to go inside it. Then why is not life coming out of it? So life needs something living. So that's the theory of biogenesis, right? Life comes from life. So write down, yes, precursor life. That's correct. So write down, the theory of spontaneous generation was dismissed. The theory of spontaneous generation dismissed. So, and you can also write the theory of, was dismissed by Louis Pasteur. The theory of spontaneous generation was dismissed by Louis Pasteur. By experimentally demonstrating that no living organism grew out of a sterilized flask. Out of a sterilized flask containing dead yeast or dead organic matter. Containing dead yeast, or dead organic matter. Whereas it only arose from exposed flask or flask exposed to open air. Non-sterilized flask exposed to open air. Okay. No, but still, none of these theories, special creation is refuted, spontaneous generation is also refuted, panspermia is debatable. We will never be able to figure out which corner of the universe amino acids got built first. But none of these answer the creation point on the planet. The question still is how the first life form, the first living cell came into existence on planet Earth. This is what we want to find out, right? So we'll continue our journey. We have come to the first step from the zero. We are on first. So you understood why some things were refuted in science. And in the next class, I'll take you from here. You have to go back and read about four revolutionary people in duo. One is Oparin and Haldane. Oparin was a Russian, Haldane was a British, I should say Englishman. So Oparin and Haldane came up with some theory which was proven experimentally by Urey and Miller. So these four people changed the way, gave us ideas and proof of how life must have originated. And today, scientists, can create artificial cells in their laboratories. All thanks to them. So we can create life from scratch or life-like substances from scratch with nothing at our disposal. So